Hello and welcome to another episode of The Advantage. I am your host, Michael Fiddle. Today is Sunday, June 2nd, and on today's podcast, we are doing another episode of Check Ball, where me and my lead playoff navigator weave through some topics, a little two-man weave we got going on, to help review the conference finals, review some off-season stuff, and preview some NBA finals. Before we get started, let me remind everyone to please rate, review, subscribe on whatever podcast channel you're listening to. If you are watching live, please drop a like in the video, drop a comment on the YouTube channel, may be able to answer some questions as we go through the video. Of course, sign up for my Substack, the free gambling newsletter that I run. You can find that at fiddlespicks.substack.com. And this podcast is sponsored by Recovery for Athletes, the #1 online retailer for all of your home recovery equipment needs. You need a Theragun, you need a home sauna, you need an ice bath, you need a red light. Check out recoveryforathletes.com. Use code THEADVANTAGE for a discount off your order. Joining me on the other side of the break is AV. Let's get it popping.
I'm the type to get shit done. You the type to observe. March Madness on my speakers, but today's November 23rd. Got something loud in the blunt, yeah. I don't say what I want, yeah. Probably somewhere sunny and tan. Foreign women in the sun, yeah. That's all that I need. That's all that I need. That's all that I need. Got my brothers with me. Got my brothers with me, and my mama's healthy. That's all that I need.
All right, welcome in. Like I said, joining me is Austen Vernon, our lead playoff navigator. You have the handles for all of the topics as we go through them. Before I throw to you, and before we start where we always do, let me just break down the list of topics that we are going to cover on today's Check Ball. Of course, we will say something nice about a team headed to Cancun. This is tradition. You want good karma? You say something nice about people when everyone's shitting on them. So we will initiate some good karma with the gambling gods as we head to the NBA Finals by talking nice things about Pacers and Wolves. We will discuss some offseason for Pacers and Wolves. We will discuss some potential Karl Anthony Towns fake trade scenarios. And I came up with one of the greatest basketball questions. I'm really excited for AV's take on this. Are the Pacers more Halliburton, like Pacers with Halliburton, are they more Luka, where you might see them back in the conference finals in a few years, back in the NBA finals or getting to the NBA finals? Or are they more like the Hawks and Trae Young, where that was kind of a one and done, kind of a lucky run, and we probably won't see them back? I want to see which representation these Pacers fall into. Plenty of more to get through. Great list of topics, some NBA final stuff. AV, get us started. You have the full list. Where do we begin?
Yeah, I love that question. So I want to try and get to that second. But if it's karma that we're getting by praising these teams on their way out, and these are teams that made it to their conference finals that had a great year, I have no problem starting by saying something super nice about both of these teams. So let's start there. And I'll start with the Wolves, who sort of had a bit of a PR swing the last two rounds from being crowned, the best defense ever and the team of the future and Antas Jordan to, Guba. I mean, that was a big overhype. But that being said, I think the team is still set up well to succeed. So what I'm going to say that's nice about them is that they're best positioned to beat what I think is the best team in the West in the next few years, which is the Nuggets. I think that even though we saw them get exposed by Luka, and that's really partly a Gobert perimeter thing that I've discussed on this show and thought I was going to be wrong after how well they defended in the first two rounds, and then got vindicated a little when Luka cooked them on the perimeter. Hardy cooked them on the perimeter. Anybody they had off the bench cooked him on the perimeter. But I think that actually this was a tough year for the Nuggets where they were hurt with Jamal. They didn't bring back Bruce Brown, who they're going to have someone in a similar role, I think, step up next year, whether that's a free agent or Christian Brown. And that's going to be the team to beat. And like sort of Houston was, who built their team to beat the Warriors for a while, I don't think it's the worst thing that the Wolves are set up to beat the Nuggets in the West.
So let's just start with Wolves, and then we'll say something nice about Pacers and offseason Pacers as a conjunction, because I completely agree that Wolves where they are is a really good place. I would
Yeah.
still like, we're going to go through some fake cat trades and it's kind of going to be, do I get you to say yes to anything? But I ultimately think you run it back with this group one more time, right? Like a lot of these upgrades people are talking about are, do you bring in a point guard? But like, I'd still give Conley more run. Conley was still mightily effective in his spots. He got hurt a little bit. I think you can't really do much better than Karl Anthony Towns in the immediate. I think the Wolves are really positioned. I think they have a emerging top end coach in the league. It was this year that I learned, AV, that you take your lumps as a first year playoff coach too. Like, right? You always take your lumps as a playoff player, but watching Finch and watching Dagnall both get outclassed by a guy like Jason Kidd was me saying, oh, wow, like coaches take their lumps too. Historically, I remember just a few years ago, Nick Nurse, title in his first year at the helm. Steve Kerr, title in his first year at the helm.
Yeah.
Ty Lue, title his first year at the helm. So, like, there were a lot of examples that showed that you could come in, win coach of the year, and be one of the top coaches throughout the NBA playoffs. Maybe the league and the coaching pool is so deep now, too. But I think Wolves got a good one in Chris Finch. I think they keep this entire core together, and I think they run it back and just say playoff lumps, young team, still, they have a tight cap, but they have all the pieces they need. So I think we'll go through these cat trades, but I think you can probably get the same things next offseason and at least try for one more year and bring it back.
I agree, and I look at guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and McDaniels, and they're people who are in a prime position to take a step forward. And if you're telling me that Mike Conley goes from being your starting point guard to like your veteran sixth man run the second unit, then that sounds good to me too. That I like a lot of versions of that team. But yeah, let's do the Pacers next. You want to start?
No. No, because this one was tougher for me, honestly.
So I have plenty.
So I want to hear what you say. That's nice about the Pacers too, because I don't want to shit on them, but I feel like I can right now. As you start, AV, I'm going to just quickly grab a water. So keep talking, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, I mean, because I have plenty of nice things to say about the Pacers here because they showed a lot in these playoffs. I did think that they had, for the most part, an easy-ish road just because of how not great the East is right now. And in the end, the Knicks ran out of steam and health. But you had a lot of guys who got a ton of experience. These are overperforming role players who you might be in a tough position if their contracts are up soon because now teams have seen how valuable they can be in the playoffs. But guys who you thought were sort of like non-factors in a playoff series or towards a team's success, like Nembhard, Neesmith, TJ McConnell. Like, it's going to be hard to keep a TJ McConnell. I hear every team this offseason being like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we got a guy like TJ McConnell? That tells me some team is going to overpay TJ McConnell. But I think that they showed a lot with their core, and they're in an interesting position with Siakam. But even if Siakam doesn't come back, I don't think that they're in a bad position because if they can attract someone to Indiana, which is not a desirable location based on their team alone, I think the combination of Halliburton, their team success with the role players, and that there's clearly a role for a star where Halliburton's a pass first guy. He's not a me guy, that a star could come in, get paid a lot of money to be on a really good, like, tested team and take them to the next level. I think they showed a lot of things.
I will say this for the Pacers. They're in a massive basketball state. Like, you call Indiana small market state, but like they love their hoops in Indiana. So their football stadium is known as the Loud House. So if you bring a raucous team to Indiana, they could be great. And I agree with all the things you said. It's great experience for the role players. You even add in a guy, Ben Mathurin, who I think would have been huge in the absence of like Tyrese Halliburton, or he's a potential guy who could step forward and become a bit more of a self-creator and could, form his own offense and can ISO a little bit. Because that's like the one thing missing that they need. It's like one more ISO perimeter scorer. The stuff that troubles me for the Pacers is, you say if they bring back Pascal back. The choices are they offer Pascal Siakam a massive fucking contract, or the Pacers take some terrible PR and don't offer him this supposed contract that they were planning on offering him the whole time, and send out a bad message to any other impending free agent or trade piece or
No,
some three
I think
first
they're going to
round
offer
picks
him.
in a trade. So they're going to pay Pascal. Secondary to that is like, okay, how do you feel about Pascal? But secondary to that, I think they have to pay Obi Toppin. And
I like Obi too, but
yeah,
don't you Pascal has said that he is not committed to Indiana, that he's going to look at the free agent market. If you're saying that no one else is going to offer him, then okay,
do you
yeah,
think
then
like
Indiana
Orlando is
is
going to
the
offer
team.
Siakam a max contract next to
I,
Paolo?
I I think that we've seen by far worse players get maxes, and I think we saw him overperform on a team he got traded to mid-season where he was actually good in the playoffs. They leaned on
I have
him
the
as
best question for you, AV.
yeah. What do you then? Let's jump to it.
Does the Wolves' success this year with Cat and Gobert make teams like Orlando with Paolo and kind of a logjam with Wendell Carter Jr. and Jonathan Isaac, are they more okay bringing in not the best fit in Siakam? Or do we look at a team like the 76ers who have Embiid and Maxey and think, okay, we can bring in and have our own Gobert Towns Ant with Maxey, Siakam, Joel, probably even more offensive versatility amongst the three of them? Like, how much does the Wolves' success with two bigs allow a greater Siakam market to exist? Because Orlando and Philly would be the two places that could offer him a max, right? I don't think the Spurs are going to do it with Wembanyama. So, I mean, there's another one, right? But like, do we think that the Wolves' success with two bigs shows all three other max contract places that we've been talking about? Indiana, if Indiana offers him, he's gonna take it, and that's the place where he's gonna get it because it's the right fit too. These other places that have the availability don't have the right fit. Well, now we've learned the fit might not be the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I actually do think the fit is good in Indiana, but I don't know that the two big situation in Minnesota applies as much to Siakam just because Siakam is someone who's a little bit more versatile. And yes, he brings that length, but as someone who's, more of a 6'9", a more lateral moving guy, he actually defends better than if you think about Cat and Gobert trying to get pulled out to the perimeter and how do you succeed with that on your team. I don't think you have as many concerns with Siakam. His matchup looks pretty good.
He
He's definitely
cannot
a
shoot
two-way
like
player.
Cat,
He can't,
so
but
he
he
can't
does hit open
space the other
shots.
end, and he can't go. He can't do as well as Cat. I don't think he could do as well as Cat did. Correct me if you feel otherwise. On Jokic, which is why we felt the matchup was so
Strong
good
agree.
against the Nuggets, because Cat was a good fit against Jokic. So you said the Wolves are built to beat the Nuggets. Said other team might not still be built to beat the best team because you're not matching forces here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely, I think also that Siakam will hit open jumpers if you leave him open. He's not the kind of player that doesn't give you the spacing on that end. But I also know a team like Orlando loves length. They're not shy from going over on length. They have so many good defenders there that again, good fit. It's easy to fit with a team that can defend pretty much any team, especially if you clearly can go get a bucket in the playoffs, which is something that I'm impressed with how Paolo did that. But you can't be the only person on your team to do that, especially when you're so young. So I maybe that's another fit situation. But I think there's plenty of teams that now Siakam showed he could fit on. I mean, when Toronto made that run and he was the second best player, people thought he was so good. It's not that he's considerably worse than them, but he has shown now multiple times, but really more within the Toronto run, that he can be the second best player on a championship team and give you games where he wins finals games, like as the number one guy.
Cat for Siakam sign and trade. Who says no?
Wow.
Wow, right? Isn't that fucking
Wow.
amazing?
It is.
Who's a
And it's
better fit
like,
next to Gobert? And then if you move on from Miles Turner eventually, if you're
so
in
that's
the
the,
Indy side, right?
so
Is
Cat
Cat
and
and
Miles Turner
Halliburton the better?
overlap.
And then you start bringing in defensive wings, or you ask Nemhart, Neesmith. Neesmith was very impressive defensively.
Sure was.
You're not bringing back Toppin because he's atrocious defensively. But yeah, whoa. So obviously
Toppin
things are
tried
getting
though
spicier with
defensively.
Siakam, pun intended, than we originally thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of these options, and that's why even though I think that the Wolves should totally run it back, and the Knicks should totally run it back too, if you're talking about a Julius Randle, and Indiana should totally run it back if you're talking about Siakam. A lot of these, second level pieces like the Cats and the Siakams and Randalls, if you shuffled around, could be really interesting. They maybe fit on a better on a different team. The only thing I will say is one thing that I think we're seeing from some of these teams is sometimes not getting better, but just having continuity is a big boost. And that it's kind of hard to develop a team culture and to fit with each other's games and to make the sacrifices, not just come in and say, oh, I'm going to shoot less, but really find out where you need to sacrifice and then commit to that. And the teams that have sort of stuck it out are being rewarded.
So let's just quickly go through a few of these cat trades, and then I assume you're going to say no and continue the continuity and the template to beat the Nuggets. But if you were the Wolves, would you do this? Would you consider this an upgrade, assuming the other team offered this to you? Julius Randle and picks in a Knicks package. Does Julius Randle make you better if you're the Wolves?
And picks. Well, I mean, and picks is tough. But if I'm just saying what player makes you better, I think Cap is better on both teams, but and I know we saw him struggle in the playoffs, and we didn't see Julius do anything. But I think Cat has the higher potential, is better on both teams. But I maybe still wouldn't do the trade even as the Knicks because of how well they played, and it would be so hard for a fan base who's loved this team more than anything, and they did so well this year to say, okay, now we're going to bail on sort of like the Amari of this new era, who was the first to come here and believe in, who's on a good contract. It'd be tough for either team. Yeah.
Cat for Miles Bridges, Mikal Bridges, the Nets.
I mean,
oh my god, I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah.
So does Brooklyn bring in Cat and say maybe he's actually a closer to a number one player than we thought Bridges was next to Cam Johnson? And does Minnesota say we need a perfect third star next to Gobert and Ant? And Bridges plays 82, can do whatever you want from him on offense and defense.
Bridges is such a good fit on so many teams, and the Wolves are no exception. He's such a good defender.
Is he better than Cat there?
Oh, absolutely. If they had an opportunity to put him there, you do that, in my mind, a million times over. We saw how well
Brooklyn doesn't do that because of the contract.
And Brooklyn doesn't do it. And not only because of the contract, but because I think if they were to sell out, they realize they can get a lot more for Mikal than they can for Cat. I know Cat is more, the number one guy.
You're right in saying that. Yeah. That's the linchpin here. They can go to Memphis and say, give us 5 first round picks, or whatever. Okay. Hawks for either of the guards?
Murray for Cat, you mean like a DeJounte for Cat situation?
Or Trey? Like if you're the Wolves, do either make you better?
Yeah, DeJounte probably does, but it's weird because we talked about why didn't they go out and get DeJounte instead of Gobert? And in a similar vein, I know we saw Cat struggle, but we saw Gobert struggle too. Why are none of our conversations about potential Gobert trades? Not that his contract is as tradable or as he's as exciting to a rebuilding team like a Cat who you can give the ball to, but I mean, what if Cat was their big? Naz Reid steps in. They still have their too big situation, but maybe they get better on both ends.
Very, very comfortable with that too. Does Jimmy go back to Minnesota?
Wow, I don't think so. I don't think Jimmy leaves Miami. There's been so much talk of Jimmy leaving Miami, and unless you have some insider stuff, I don't really see him leaving Miami.
Okay, and last one, is it a win-win in a situation for a Paul George sign and trade because he's the Clippers free agent and they don't know if they want to give him the max? What if Minnesota says, fuck the luxury tax, we'll pay the max, PG next to Ant with Gobert, and Cat next to Kawhi and Harden?
Without even getting to the Minnesota part of that, I don't think the Clippers are doing that. So I think the Clippers are moving to this new arena. They have this sick wall situation where apparently it's like a wall of fans and y'all can smoke weed, and it seems like a very fun situation. They really want this to be a hype season. They're not going in with the unknown. They just re-signed Ty Lue. They have all their guys. They know when they're healthy that they're as good as anyone in the West, even though the West is crazy tough. I think they're going to do their best to bring their guys back, keep everyone healthy. If there's a piece or two they can add, or they have like an off-season problem with PG or one of them, okay, then maybe they have to shift. But no, their plan A is, I think, bring everyone back, have a successful first season in the new venue.
Okay, let's move on to NBA final stuff, AV. I have a bunch of topics that you can choose from. I think we start with who do you think wins, who do you want to win? That's a question for you, but then we're also going to go through random player you think you could be an X factor in the finals. I'm going to ask you for who do you think is going to have most rebounds in the series, because what was it, 2 years ago when I first started this pod, you said Wiggins was going to be a crazy rebounder through the playoffs and was picking that price off and made us a ton of money with that. So let's see if there's any long shots to bring that back. And then we'll just go over some just other finals, Luka in Boston type of scenarios. Who do you think get potential MVPs? So
Ooh.
start us off. Who do you think wins? Who do you want to win?
Yeah, I mean that's easy, and then I'll elaborate. But I think the Celtics win, and I want the Mavs to win, and it's pretty
Agreed.
much as simple as that. I've never really been a Boston fan, probably just because they've been so good for a while. I like the players on the team. I even sort of like the way they play. It's just I'm used to being a little anti-Boston. And the Mavs have been a lot of fun. Luka Magic has been great. I love Kyrie's game in terms of entertainment value. He's always, top one or two or three of anyone you can watch with the ball. Another part of the reason we love Ant so much. He was in that same category. But I actually think that I wouldn't be surprised if it was a close series or the Mavs won. So I don't think for anyone who's like, the Celtics numbers were crazy this year. They're by far the best team. They're the big favorite here. I just wouldn't be so surprised if it was the Mavs. And part of that is Porzingis. If Porzingis comes back and he's as good as we remember him and he is an X factor, then I think it maybe isn't close at all. But it's hard to integrate when you miss so many of the games in the playoffs. I don't know what we're gonna get. And if you don't get full Porzingis, maybe it's close. And if you get him kind of being a problem and they need to figure out how much to play him, how much to go more towards Hauser, and that is an issue for them. Maybe that's kind of the edge for the Mavs because the Mavs have consistency from the last round.
Yeah, if Hauser's going to remain chucking up bricks while being a
Oof.
sniper all year, like, geez, he's been the one not ready for the moment. I think it bodes well. Talked about this a lot on the finals betting preview I did with Drew. Everyone should go check that out. That was primarily betting advice. We are going to do some more basketball talk here. But like, if Horford has this amount of rest pre-finals, and then between games 1 and 2, 3 days, between games 2 and 3, 3 days, and then it starts to go every other for the back end of the series, I think you might get a well-rested and good Al Horford too. So
Yeah.
less concern for me on the Porzingis stuff because it sets up well for Horford to be there if needed. And I think like he should be one you can count on if he's rested. Okay. Random player you think can be an X factor in the finals. Did I just give one away with Al Horford? I don't think that's random enough. Let's
Yeah.
go. Let's go random. You start us off. Random player you think can be an X factor in the finals.
I mean, it's so funny trying to think of one for the Celtics because they're so good and deep this year that you essentially have to go with someone who's like 8, 9, 10 in the rotation. And often teams only go like 8 men deep. So the Celtics is a funny one. But if Hauser magically is not throwing up bricks and Porzingis either can't play or isn't good, then he at least becomes an option. But it's really easy for him. Make him and you're in, miss him and you're out. But Peyton Pritchard, I think, is an interesting one too for the Celtics because they can sort of hide him on Kyrie. He has been shooting and playing so well, and if they need sort of a spark, he fits that category. And then my options for the Wolves, they're not fun because they're the ones they've always had, but it's who of Derrick Jones Jr. or PJ Washington is going to be the more impactful defender, hit more of his threes, and then that person is obviously stepping up into that spot.
I put a Tim Hardaway Jr. in there for
Hmm.
Mavericks too, just in case he has one game where he just has 26 off the bench, right?
Yeah,
Like
and they need that.
17 in a second and third quarter that they just need, and then they go back to Luka and Kyrie down the stretch, and he's what kept them in and was having like a Nemhart type instant offense performance. I don't think it's going to be Hardy. I think between Derrick Jones Jr. and PJ Washington, whoever hits their threes is going to be crazy impactful. The
Yeah.
bigs on and whichever big performs on Boston, whether that's Hauser, Porzingis, Horford hitting their shots, or like the other one we didn't mention was potential O'Shea Brissett. We saw him play against the Pacers a little bit. Like, can he, if Jaylen Brown gets into early foul trouble, is it Brissett in to guard Luka because we think of the size and the athleticism type of compatibility where you could put shooters around Brissett? But we'll see. We'll see it all play out.
When I saw O'Shea Brissett and Tillman play a little bit for the Celtics in that series, it just sort of reminded me that for most of the playoffs and really the whole season, the Celtics pretty much have no one on the floor who's a weak link. Because Tillman, to me, at times I was like, "Who is this guy?" He's sort of bumbling around, doesn't look great. Brissett at times a little out of it. I'm like, this is the only time I've looked at the Celtics and been like, "Oh, they might have a weak link who like it looks like they're out of it on offense. You can pick them on defense." Otherwise, I look at them on the floor and I'm like, what do you do here?
So I'm going to go ahead, AV, and put on the shared screen I have to log out of my FanDuel account so not everyone can see how much I have in there. And then
Um,
and then put up the most
oh, good.
rebounds
Okay.
odds. So let's do this live.
Yeah.
You
So
called
when
this what, like 2 years ago, Wiggins. I think it was like 18-1, and I don't remember if he was the outright winner or it was an easy hedge at late in the series, but I remember winning like 10 units on a nice Andrew Wiggins to be a leader at rebounder, and it was a dream. So do that for me again, please. I asked you no betting advice throughout the entire year until we asked for rebounds at the NBA Finals. Is there anyone, especially with these teams, right? Like Tatum and Luka are the lead rebounders for their squad. So maybe there is some sneaky value in attacking someone else, or maybe the stats are just going to be so condensed you look for it at the top. Give me your
I mean,
thoughts.
I will say when the Warriors went to the finals and I picked Wiggins out, he stood out to me immediately. We talked about the reason that would be the way that Draymond boxed out. There was a real reason to it. And when I look at the list here, and you really, I'm trying not to pick like a Tatum or Luka. You want the value guys. It's tough because they're essentially all four big men who are in the same situation where any one of them potentially could get a ton of rebounds. Lively for me, much more than the rest, but that they're at a risk to not play more than 20 minutes a game. And then they're not
Exactly.
necessarily in it. Luca always leads his team in rebounds. Tatum, I would be so much more confident in the Tatum pick if they told me who he was going to be guarding. And more
Tatum will be
importantly,
guarding PJ Washington or Derrick Jones Jr. He'll be guarding one of
okay,
those
so
guys, but it's going to
so
be
then
Luka. It's
that's
going to be
exactly where he
Jaylen Brown on
rebounds from.
Luka.
I mean, that's literally where he rebounds from, where he sits in that weak side corner, help everyone boxes like Horford, doesn't need the stats to rebound. He comes in, he gets to start
I
the
agree.
break. Very similar to what they do with Luca, and so it's hard to pick against either of those guys. But it's probably going to be Tatum. I mean, that's just, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Tatum it is.
I know
I'll be
that's not
placing a
fun.
bet on Jason Tatum most rebounds. He also slaps the ball so fucking
Yeah,
hard when
like
he grabs
college.
the
Yeah.
rebound. I can hear the echo from across the country.
Yep.
Okay. What else do we
It's
need
an
to
it's an
discuss?
old school thing about his game that he does there.
I
I
had
mean,
one Luca in Boston topic for you, and then I wanted
okay,
general. Do you have anything?
okay.
Um, Two thoughts. One, Ant was getting all the comparisons to MJ. I think the real comparison here is Luca to MJ in the
Hmm.
sense that if there's one person in the league when you're an away crowd you don't talk shit to, you don't poke the bear anymore. The person who's the don't poke the bear crown has to be Luca at this point, right? Like it went MJ, Kobe, probably even LeBron. We saw what he did to Dylan Brooks. And now it's Luca with Gobert and screaming at fans like, you like that motherfucker? So is Luca like the one guy, if you were a Boston fan, you wouldn't talk shit to?
Luca is the number one right now, but I'm going to take a step back and say I'm a huge LeBron fan. We both are, and I don't think LeBron even gets into that sort of that MJ Kobe shit talking. Don't poke the bear. In fact, I think a lot of other teams and fan bases have been shockingly comfortable over the years, sort of messing
Yeah,
with
that's true.
LeBron, or
That's true.
so. But
So who's had
but
it? Who's had it
I
besides
don't
Kobe?
nobody, which is why people are so excited to crown Ant MJ, which they shouldn't. There's a
Right.
graveyard other than Kobe of all these MJ comps over the years who have fallen short, but they shouldn't do that. But if it's anyone right now who's showing, it's Luca and Ant. Luca beat Ant in the last series, showing he's that guy. But like just because you're nice and on fire right now and talking shit doesn't mean you have to be MJ. Luca does it sort of all in his own angry way, and I like his style. He's been so much fun. Like it was so
Yeah, it's
easy
more
for me.
outward, it seems.
Yeah, definitely. And you see him get into it with the crowd a little bit, but he's still likable as he goes kind of along his shit talking journey here. But I don't think we need to compare them, but it is. And I think that there's been a lack of that in the NBA for a while, for better or worse.
Okay, my second question is there's been a lot of hatred towards the opponent superstar that comes into Boston, right? I think we know that LeBron's definitely been one of those. There's been a history, whether that's Larry Magic stuff and then Larry embracing Magic to a certain point. Um, there's been a connotation that Boston's racist as a
Yeah.
sports franchise fan base. Um, if Luca, like, do you feel like we can attribute some of that to this series? Do you think we're going to see so much anger directed towards Kyrie? do you think if we end up hearing from Boston fans like, you just gotta respect Luka. Like, if that's the mindset, like he's just a great player. Like, yeah, we're rooting against him, but you gotta respect that man. Is this just a re-emphasis of everything?
This is so hard because on the one hand, there have been so many players over the years and recently that have described Boston fans as not only racist, but just like more racist than all the other cities. And that's like, what more of a comparison can there be when you be like, oh, I go to 30 places to play basketball, and this one place maybe with this other place, Utah, but mostly Boston is the
Can I
worst to play
interject
for
real
me.
quick? I lived
Yeah,
in
of course.
Boston
Yeah.
For a year. The one thing I was the most surprised about while living in Boston was zero diversity in my neighborhood and American flags up everywhere. Like literally streets, not homes, streets lined with American flags on every lamppost through residential neighborhoods. Like it was bizarre to live there. I was like, this is way more insulated and than I thought it would be coming from a different place and looking on to Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I unrelated. I feel like I've seen some HBO Boston docs recently about sort of how racism is ingrained in their city and their police force, and I'll stay out of that for now because I actually think that despite that being a fixable fact, but like a fact over the years, that even guys like Jaylen Brown who are on the team acknowledge and have
Yeah.
sort of come at odds with. I think that's not going to be the factor because I think the Kyrie factor is still so much bigger in their fans' minds than people out of those cities realize. Because as much as we remember, his problems there, him leaving there, him coming and stomping on the leprechaun and him Sage and all that, it's not as it feels like it's so long ago that it's like, they wouldn't care, but it's so fresh and means something to them. He's gonna have all of the vitriol. So it's almost like having Luca, who, yeah, in this situation is the white boy, come in and have him sort of be like a league favorite right now, and also not Kyrie, I think is gonna be a bigger thing than like how pro white boy Luca are they gonna be because they just like white people.
I think we'll see it all play out, but I think it could be like implicitly still within how much vitriol is directed towards Kyrie versus Luka when Luka's truly the superstar there. We'll see it all play out. Do you have any NBA Finals topics you want to throw back at me, or are we good?
It's funny. Like I think about a place like Dallas. I'm like, Dallas isn't known for being so like race friendly. I think they've embraced Luca and Dirk and whites over the years. Like, what's it going to be like there? But it's it is a different situation. I have to say they have embraced Kyrie. Not, and it comes from the top with Mark Cuban. I don't know what sort of is going on with him stepping back for a political run or how involved he is, but it was bringing Kyrie in the way they did in the situation he was a real buy low for them. They both saw something that could have been and like proactively worked with Kyrie to make it fit. I'm sure that they, in terms of their like people skills, have showed why they're a great organization.
They've been doing the Kyrie victory lap that like we knew, but like we had the framework in place, whether that was Jay Kidd, who he and Kyrie have the same birthday. And, Kyrie grew up in New Jersey, a big Nets fan, idolizing Jay Kidd and almost playing pretty similar in the passing and the theatrics in the game. And then there's the kind of Nico Harrison, which is his guy from Nike that he worked with a lot, is now the president of basketball ops or like one of the main GMs at the Mavericks. They brought over Matt Riccardi, who was with him in Brooklyn, who was like a good person, like really good. Now is the assistant GM in Dallas. And of course, they got like the whole system and structure set up for it to be. They're also in Texas, so you can kind of say what you want on the outside and people aren't going to care too much. So that'll wrap us up for today's Check Ball. We got one more to get through. When the NBA Finals ends, AV, we will do a Finals recap and an off-season projection pod. We'll occasionally get you back as there's some big storylines through the summer.
Nice.
But thank you as always. Thank you for everyone for listening. Check out the fiddlespicks.substack.com. Check out the NBA Finals betting preview that I did with Drew. Obviously, giving out Jason Tatum isn't the most exciting betting advice to have most rebounds. So if you want a ton of good bets, check out the most recent episode on the Advantage Sports Betting Podcast, which is the NBA Finals betting breakdown. Thank you again, and peace out.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.